Hi, I'm Belly from Greenwood Solutions. Today we're going to be talking about panel row spacing. It's a very important concept here because a row of panels at the front ideally doesn't want to shade a row of panels that is behind. Panel row shading is a recommendation from the CEC, which is the Clean Energy Council. So what they stipulate is that a panel row should not be shaded between the hours of 10 AM and 2 PM on the shortest day of the year, and in the Southern Hemisphere that's June 21st, 22nd. In the Northern Hemisphere it's obviously winter solstice. Between those hours there should be no shade projected on the row behind. So with panel row spacing there's a few important concepts to understand. One is the azimuth angle, and this is the compass direction for the sunlight projected from the centre of the sun onto a horizontal plane. At solar noon, the sun is always directly north in the Southern Hemisphere. As you can see from this diagram, we have a panel tilted at a certain angle, and there is an azimuth altitude angle. So we'll be talking about two geographic locations. One's Melbourne and the other one is Brisbane. In both cases, we'll be using the example of a sun power panel, a 385 watt sun power panel that is 2,000 millimeters long, or 2 meters, and it will be inclined at 20 degrees. There's lots of ways of doing calculations in regards to panel row spacing. We use a fairly easy way, but it's an effective way. The Clean Energy Council, the CEC, has provided a table that has an azimuth altitude ratio for each geographic location. And in the case of Melbourne, this ratio is 2.091. Now, as mentioned, we've got this panel, sun power panel, 2,000 mil long, and we are pitching it at 20 degrees. So the calculation is the sine tilt x over 2,000. So there's a few ways of doing these calculations. We're using the old Pythagoras, a squared equals b squared plus c squared. Pythagoras, I'm so sorry. It's not a squared equals b squared plus c squared. It's c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Sorry. But effectively the sine angle is 20 degrees, and you multiply that by the length of the panel, and that comes out at 684 mil. So that is the distance from the top of the panel to the actual roof. Now I'm about to go to the board. Oh shit, wrong way. Sorry for the delay, but we're here over at the board just to clear up a few things. So we're talking about a panel that's 2,000 mil long. It's at 20 degree pitch, 20 degree. And this height above the roof is determined by the calculation, sine, yes maths, sine at 20 degrees times the length of the panel, which is 2,000 mil. Now, that figure stays the same regardless of whether we're in Hobart, Darwin, Brisbane, or any part of the Northern Hemisphere. It's going to be the same fixed distance. We take this figure and we multiply it by this figure over here, and for Melbourne, 2.091. Remember, that's the azimuth altitude ratio that comes from the CEC table for all these main locations around Australia. Now, these two figures here multiply together and they become 1,430 mil. Now, if we were talking about Brisbane, we would remove this figure here, maybe like that, and then this figure here becomes 917 millimeters. Hence, as mentioned before or after, the difference between a configuration in Brisbane, 5-row configuration, and in Melbourne, well, you're going to take up a lot less distance, 2.5 meters to be exact. So a lot more energy dense in Brisbane than in Melbourne. In other words, you can get a heck of a lot more panels per given area. Okay, so this distance is here. So there's the back of the panel. We bring a vertical line down to the roof, And then we come along and there's the front of that panel, and in Melbourne, 1430 millimetres is the recommended minimum row spacing between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on the shortest day of the year. If it was in Brisbane, this figure would become, 917 mil. Remember, that's a minimum. But as I mentioned before or after, it is prudent probably to look at designing systems between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. I tell you what, those Queenslanders are so lucky. Not only do they get more sun, their row spacing is less, so they can actually get more panels on a roof, or if it's a ground mount situation, than say down in Melbourne. We're really quite envious here down in Melbourne. In conclusion, the higher the tilt of the panel, the greater the spacing between the rows. A solar installation at the same tilt in Melbourne is going to take up more room than say in Brisbane. The 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. shading rule is a recommendation. It's a should, not a shall. In fact, it is a good idea to actually design between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. If you're talking about east-west configurations, maybe the panel spacing should be a little bit wider because of the angle of the sun. Look, each site is different. Thanks very much for watching the presentation today on panel row spacing using Melbourne and Brisbane as an example. We really appreciate your feedback. Any questions, any answers, any suggestions, greatly appreciated. Please subscribe. And one more thing, a big sorry, Pythagoras, sorry about that.